talk about the male bits here for a little bit, and then we'll call it a day. The female primary organ is the ovary. For the male, it is the testy. Everything else is accessory. Everything else is either to just get the sperm where they need to be or to further their development. That's all the reproductive system is for the male. Okay. When it comes to where sperm development occurs, it occurs really outside the body. The testes are going to be housed in a structure that's called the scrotum. This helps to reduce the temperature of where sperm development occurs by just a few degrees. And it is these few degrees, that cooler environment, that sperm need to fully mature properly. If the testes become too warm, too hot, sperm development does not occur properly. They don't have the proper tail. Could have weird kinks in the tail. They're not an effective swimmer in that regard. Could have a misshapen midpiece, the motor for the flagellum, for the tail. All right. So we need these few degrees difference to ensure that that doesn't happen. If you're having an issue with trying to get your significant other pregnant, that's why they suggest wearing boxers, to get the testes to descend a little bit further away from the core of the body to lower their temperature even more. That's why you shouldn't put a laptop on your lap if you're a guy, because it can affect sperm development. The great thing about the scrotum is that it's protective. There are a couple different layers of muscle inside of the scrotum. And these help to move the testes closer to the body or further away from the body in order to protect them. Because, right, we weren't really designed with clothes in mind, right? So this dartos muscle is a layer of smooth muscle that can help to regulate the temperature, if you will, of the scrotum by protecting it, by bringing it up closer to the skin or closer to the core of the body. There is another muscle involved as well, the cremaster muscle. The cremaster muscle is actually a reflex that you can test. So if you have a scrotum, it's easy to test. If you don't have one, you have to find a willing participant. If you stroke the inner thigh near that scrotum, the cremaster muscle contracts and pulls that scrotum up towards the pelvis. And it's actually a great test for the integrity of the lower aspect of the nervous system. Okay. There's cremaster muscle. Okay. So the cremaster muscle and the dartos muscle. Cremaster muscle is really the one that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting to bring that testy closer to the body. The dartos muscle really just does wrinkling more than anything. And wrinkling of the scrotal sac does one thing, and that's to increase proprioceptive input. So, again, we weren't designed with clothes in mind. So when you're out in the brush walking around, if something gets a little close, that dartos muscle helps to kind of wrinkle up the skin a little bit. That increases proprioceptive input. And that lets you know if something's getting close to your penis. Here's the spermatic cord right here. It is this structure right here. Okay. Here is that cremaster muscle, and the dartos muscle is just kind of sandwiched here within the skin, just right underneath the skin of the scrotum. So it really helps with that crinkling up. There's the cremaster muscle right there. This is collectively referred to as the spermatic cord. The testes start their development inside the abdomen. And it's the presence of that Y chromosome that causes that proto reproductive structure to become a testes and start its descent down from the abdomen through that inguinal canal and descend down into the scrotal sac. When we look at the testes, this is where the magic happens. Okay, this is where sperm production occurs, and this is where our male sex hormones get produced, the androgens. Similar to the ovary, right? The ovary is where all the magic happens for a woman, and this is where all the magic happens for a guy. In the female, we had a germinal epithelium, and we had a tunica albuginea. Here we have what's called a tunica vaginalis and a tunica albuginea. Okay. There's the tunica vaginalis right there. And it forms kind of like the double layered membrane that we see with the heart, with the peritoneum, with the lungs, with the peritoneum, with the pericardium, with the peritoneum that we'll talk about when we talk about the digestive tract. Okay, so it forms kind of a parietal layer and a visceral layer. Okay, covering the actual cavity and covering the actual organ itself. So, so that tunica vaginalis kind of forms a parietal layer and a visceral layer and helps to kind of create a space, if you will, for the testes to be housed within the scrotum. And I don't get into it all, but it's actually important. I mean, the testes have it's called a testes blood barrier, like the brain blood barrier. The testes have one as well. And that's to ensure that sperm can develop properly and not be affected at all by different things. And it's also so we don't mount an immune response against our stuff. So that's the significance of it. But it just, compartmentalizes it, helps to separate it. That's its major function. The tunica, the tunica albuginea is right here. And the tunica albuginea helps to really compartmentalize the inside of the testes. Okay. Those internal projections, that compartmentalization of the tunica albuginea formed what's called the septa. And it divides it up into lobules. And you don't need to know how many. I'm not going to ask how many lobules are in the testes. But the tunica albuginea helps to compartmentalize the testes into lobules. And that's what you see right here. Here's a lobule, a lobule, a lobule, a lobule, a lobule, a lobule. There you go. It is within these lobules that we have seminiferous tubules. This is the specific locale of sperm development. It's just a bunch of tubes, as you can kind of see from the picture, very convoluted, stuffed into a lobule. And it's within these tubules is where we have sperm formation. We have a number of different types of cells. One of the major cells that we have here inside the seminiferous tubules are the sustentacular cells. They help ensure that sperm development occurs at a constant rate. As sperm increase in number, sustentacular cells will secrete inhibin. Inhibin inhibits FSH, and this helps to regulate sperm development. We can get sperm to develop, and we can store them in the epididymis for release. But if we're not using them, if we're not releasing them, we reabsorb them. Okay? So it is purposeful to ensure that sperm production, sperm maturation happens at a specific pace. Okay? It ensures that they divide correctly, that we get them ready for swimming effectively. So when sperm counts start to become higher, inhibin gets released by these sustentacular cells to just slow down the development. Okay, we have enough guys, we have enough swimmers ready. All right, let's just slow down a little bit until we need more swimmers. That's basically what these cells do. We have a number of other cells called interstitial cells, and it's these cells that actually help to spur along sperm development. Interstitial cells secrete testosterone, androgens. Testosterone is just the most common male one we have. So that's going to be the dude behind the scenes when it comes to sperm development, as we'll talk about next lecture. Here's that blood testes barrier that I was talking about here. It helps from preventing an immune response by the body, which is always a great thing. Okay. It actually, in utero, does some work as well. Helps to prevent mother's blood from seeing it and mounting an immune response. So this blood testes barrier is pretty important. Tight junction around these sustentacular cells and this. Okay. So it does some fun stuff, but I don't want to get into it. I don't usually ask maybe one question about it, maybe if you're lucky. When it comes to the development of the sperm, guys, it is all done by the same hormones as it is in women. FSH and LH. Gonadotrophin releasing hormone gets stimulated as we get closer to puberty. This stimulates an anterior pituitary, just like it did in a woman, to increase production of FSH and LH, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. This is what's stimulating the development of the follicle. But for guys, we don't call it a follicle, we call it a sperm cell. So FSH is going to cause the development of sperm. Luteinizing hormone actually does the testosterone. Okay, so luteinizing hormone is going to help to stimulate testosterone. FSH ensures the development of the sperm. And you can see it does a whole bunch of fancy pants roundabout ways of doing that. Okay, stimulates the ability for succinacular cells to secrete androgen binding proteins, which bind to the testes and ensure testosterone gets into the testes and causes spermatory. Who cares? Okay, FSH stimulates sperm development. That's all you need to know. Luteinizing hormone stimulates the secretion of testosterone from those interstitial cells. As interstitial cells secrete testosterone, that's going to facilitate the development of the sperm. As this increases, what do you think develops? Well, more sperm, greater sperm count. So again, we have that inhibin. And just like with women, with all the fun secondary sex characteristics, testosterone helps with all the fun secondary sex characteristics for the men's.